Okay, the recording light is on. I'm David Brownstein. Welcome to the 2020 Music Industry Evolution Summit. I'm here with Joe Wadsworth today. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, really great to have you. Really great to have you. Um, I'm going to read Joe's bio, which is exciting and fun. Joe is the founder and head producer at the Online Recording Studio. The Online Recording Studio works with aspiring artists from around the world to professionally produce and record their songs remotely, offering top quality tracks for affordable rates and the flexibility that physical studios simply can't provide. He started the company out of his university dorm room nearly 5 years ago. The company's grown to have a team of more than 25 producers, engineers, designers, and coaches that work remotely with artists on all aspects of their work, of their music and career. Welcome, Joe Wadsworth.
Thank you very much. I couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah. I should have psychically intuited all that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, Before we get started, Joe, tell me like your first musical influence. Like what inspired you to get on the musical journey?
Well, I mean, I played piano from being very young. Both of my parents were actors, like musical theatre actors. And so my mum, when I was very young, sort of sat me down at the piano and was like, right, do your practice. And she helped me all through, until I was, I'd say sort of 11 or 12. She would sit with me every day and help me practice on the piano, much to my resistance, probably until I was about 15 or 16, although she didn't sit with me until I was that old. In terms of actually wanting to be in the music industry and work in production in some form, I would say it was Mark Ronson was the person who
Really?
I really idolized. Yeah, because he released the album Version when I was, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12. And it was one of the first singles I ever bought on CD. The first single I actually bought is quite embarrassingly Toxic by Britney Spears, but we can edit that out,
I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way. I know a lot of people who say the same exact thing.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
It's a great song.
But he released that album Version, and it was the first album. It was the first time I'd ever really listened to cover versions that were like well produced of stuff. And something about that really, I don't know, it really resonated with me. And I really enjoyed the fact that you could take something that had already been done one way and do it another way. And some of the songs that were on that album, because that whole album is covers, but just done with like brass arrangements and really jazzy arrangements that were really cool. And I just thought this guy is the coolest guy in the world and I would like to be him. And then that was the sort of the first domino, I suppose, in the line that then led to this point, I suppose.
That's really great. That's great. I did not know that he did an album of covers, and I'm going to check it out now.
Yeah, so he did his first album, I think it's called Here Come the Fuzz, and it's like a hip hop album because he was a hip hop producer to begin with, and he like made beats and stuff. And he has that really famous song. He had like one big hit off that first album, and then yeah, he did the second album, which had like Valerie with Amy Winehouse. He did a song with Lily Allen. People did one with Robbie Williams, Kasabian. He did a cover of a Coldplay song. So there were like some big. They did a cover of Just by Radiohead. Like in a sort of jazz version, and it's a great album. It really, really is a fantastic album, and something about the way that he managed to bring new life to songs that were already really good. Often you find a cover and you'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool, but in some of these, actually, I much prefer them to the original, and I think that's very rare that happens when someone takes someone else's music and then makes it their own in a totally unique way.
Well, there's definitely an art to what is now being called the reimagined cover. It's great, and he's done a good job of that stuff. That's good. I didn't know he had such a deep catalog. I will now go into all those things because I love what he does. Sometimes I love what he does. Sometimes it's so derivative that I get annoyed.
Yeah, I would say that I like his music as time has gone on. I still love that album. I think it's a brilliant album, but I think that I don't like his music that he's making now quite as much, because you're right, it is very, very derivative. And I think when you actually look at it, his album Version is very derivative. I was just too young to realize that. And also he was the first one that was taking his inspiration from that period that he did. And it's sort of real sort of Motown or like really brass, brass heavy arrangements that are sort of some like big band sound as well. And he was sort of one of the first people to do that. And so no one really noticed how derivative it was at the time, I think.
That's great. Well, everyone's got their style and their influences. It's partly kind of why I love to ask people what the first musical inspiration was, because it tells something about your journey and who you are. And so it's interesting you're saying that Mark Ronson's always had the horns thing going on. So when he did the Amy Winehouse stuff and Bruno Mars stuff, it's like it's part of his DNA, and that's what you're always kind of sort of get. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me, how did that lead you to, or what was the connection in that into starting this online recording studio? Which, I mean, so I heard about you through one of our other speakers, and I love that you're doing a virtual recording studio, and everybody's collaborating online and sending tracks and trying to do all this stuff. But you seem to have one of the more comprehensive production studios and teams. So how did that start, and how's it going? And talk to me about that. I'm really fascinated.
Well, in terms of how it started. Well, I was a student studying music production. Well, all through being at sort of high school, I wanted to start a record label without really knowing what that meant. I was like, I'm going to start a record label. That's going to be it. I'm going to be a music producer without any clear plan of what that actually meant. And so then I ended up turning down a place at the Guildhall in London, which was quite a sort of teenage reckless decision. And I only really did it just to be, I don't know, just stupid and rebellious. And so then I ended up going to Leeds College of Music and then getting my student loan in. And this was the first time that I'd ever had that amount of money put into my bank account in one go. And so I just spent it all really quickly and was totally broke. I was just like, oh, okay, I have no money now. What do I do? That went very, very quickly. And so then
The making of a music producer.
yeah, it has to start with being absolutely broke. And so I then, just by chance, I think, just by being around other musicians and seeing how much they were kind of posting on social media and Instagram, how active they were on that, I was like, right, I'll go on Instagram and I'll see what's going on. And I saw that every single day there were at least 1 million posts with the hashtag singer-songwriter. More than 1 million posts. And this is artists of all ages from all over the world posting videos of themselves in their bedrooms singing original songs. Some covers, but on the whole, original songs. And I don't know, I just then just was like, oh, okay, maybe I could do some production for these people, and so maybe charge like £50 a time or something, really cheap prices. Did a few of these, and then we're like, oh, okay, maybe this is the thing, because there's all these artists like posting every single day. It was a whole new batch every single day of potentially 1 million
Wow.
people that you could reach out to. And so I just started talking to people and saying like, hey, look, I like your song. I'm a student. I can just make this song for you. I'll do it myself in my dorm room and just do all the stuff. And if I do need any musicians, I'll call on anyone from
Down the
I
hall.
was in
Yeah.
a halls, like my dorm was just full of musicians. And so
Right.
if we
Right.
needed a
Wow.
trumpet, we just put a thing on the Facebook group being like, hey, we need a trumpet. We've got beer and there's some pizza in here, so come head down and record a thing.
Mm-hmm,
And then as I grew less happy with the course I was studying at university, and I didn't feel like Leeds College of Music was worth how much it cost. I know that it's not close to what you guys pay over in the States for
yeah.
university, but it still felt like a lot. I then just thought, right, well, I'm just going to just try this thing. Why not? And so then we had a few of the other students I then was sort of outsourcing the projects to, and they would then work with people, and we started gradually bringing people on and building the thing and then upping the prices. And when we started, we were called My First Single. And the reason for that was that we were only working with very beginner artists. So literally it was their first time they'd ever recorded a song. And that was mainly due to the fact that was just who I'd been speaking to. It just happens that I was basically speaking to people who were my age or a little bit younger. And it was their first time recording. So we charged, £100 for a full song, produced, recorded, mixed and mastered, or whatever, or as best as I could at that point.
Yeah.
And we were called My First Single. And so we then, as we sort of grew and brought on a few more people and started to say, okay, this thing has really got some legs, on more than one occasion, I had to have the conversation with someone that there was no dating element to my first single, because the single being in the name caused some confusion. And I thought, right, we need to sort
Right.
of nip this in the
It's
bud.
not a dating site. You're right.
Not a
Right.
dating site, there's
Right.
no dating element. I don't know how they thought we were going to tie music production with dating in some way, whether it was like a dating thing for music producers or whatever. But I had to explain one too many times that there wasn't this side of it. And so I thought, right, well, let's just pick a name that will, it does what it says on the tin. We don't need to explain what it does. And also, it's like the post office. If you search for the post office, it's a perfect description of what it is, as well as being its name.
Mm-hmm.
And it also means that on Google, if you search for an online recording studio, our name is the online recording
The
studio.
online recording studio. Beautiful.
And so that was when we then started to say, okay, this we can take this more seriously, and we started bringing on more producers. Initially, it was just students, but then we sort of went, okay, no, we need to be creating something that's at a more professional level. So we had another look at the pricing module. We had a look at how we sort of were best able to serve people, and started to bring in more experienced producers who'd worked for, who were older and had, already graduated and had much more experience. And then over this course of a few years, each time someone asked for something new, so, do you guys do promotion, or do you guys do artwork? Do you guys do coaching, anything like this? We went, well, no, not currently, but hold that thought. And then we have a chat and see if it was something that we could then do. And that's kind of how we've built out the business, is just based on what people have asked for. And
So your business and your brand, that you've just continued to sort of expand into what people need when they need it, and because you have this online presence, you're able to bring people from down the hall or across the country or wherever, across the ocean, or
absolutely. And so now it's grown into being a team of producers who work out of their own recording spaces. Some work out of like home, sort of, really nice home studio recording spaces, or, professional recording studios.
mm-hmm.
And they're able to record really, really high quality tracks. It's all done remotely. And either they have musicians that they bring in, or they play a lot of the instruments themselves. And so that can be really useful for them. But what's fortunate is that we were sort of set up to do that before kind of COVID happened, and everyone had to go, right, how do we do this online? A lot of recording studios have gone under over the last few months because there's no one coming in, so they can't pay their rent. And for us, luckily, we don't have a single physical studio. The producers have their own flexibility to work out of their own spaces. And so that, luckily for us, we were sort of set up and ready to go for it. What we weren't prepared for was quite how many people were going to, suddenly it was going to be the only option for, and also how many people would apply to work, because
Right.
And I think it says something about the state of where we're at right now for music producers and for artists, that without us advertising it for the fact that we were hiring, over the last 3.5 months, we've had nearly 2,000 people apply to work for us.
Wow.
That's like individual applications with portfolios attached, with everything, ready to go. And it's kind of scary, because it's like all of these people who either, it says, I used to work in this recording studio, but we've had to close down, or, all my work's dried up because COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's been a very interesting time over the last few months, but
So do you
something
bring
luckily we were prepared for.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Do you bring people on full time or exclusive, or you just? I mean, I saw on your website that you can like buy a bass track for this much, or buy a horn track buy a keyboard track. It's kind of, I love that there's like a real specific a la carte. So even if people are making music at home, but if you still need, if you're Mick Ronson and you need some horns, you can still hire you guys for their horns or something like that.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do is make it so that you as the artist could have as much control as possible. And, the typical sort of like bronze, silver, gold thing, actually, it feels kind of cut and pasted. And the process of working on a track is more nuanced and complicated than that. And actually, you might decide at the beginning, or you might think at the beginning, hey, I just want drums and bass and acoustic guitar on this. But then as you work on it more, you want to go, okay, maybe let's get some strings on there, and let's do it Mark Ronson and get some horns on there as well. And we wanted to make sure that people got that flexibility and also the transparency that hourly work often doesn't give you, because I think, certainly from my own experience and the experience that a lot of artists that choose to work with us have had, if you book in a studio for 5 hours, it's probably going to take you 7 or 8 hours.
Right.
There are unfortunately sort of producers who know this and will add a few extra hours on top of the amount of time that it's going to take. But then in addition to that, you've got to pay for each of your musicians, and that's per hour. And then you're paying for maybe a different mastering engineer, and that's either per track or per hour or however that's going to do. And it, for inexperienced musicians or people who aren't looking to spend more than they anticipated, the traditional studio thing actually can end up being a situation in which they go into it thinking they're going to spend $300 and they come out having spent $1,000. And so with us, we have it, as you say, per instrument, and that's fully inclusive of all the production, all the recording, all the mixing, mastering, and then the artist's 100% copyright ownership. So the track belongs to the artist completely. And I think that is kind of the key to one of the things that's been good for us, has been that no one's tied into any sort of contract with us long term. There's no royalties due. There's no official obligation to come back and work with us. But because people have the freedom to build the track as they want it with the instruments, they have the freedom to own the track at the end. It means that they come back because they want to. And so we've got artists now who we've been working with since we were called My First Single, who we're still working with today. And that's something that we work really hard to maintain. And I think that thing of having an online community more than ever now is absolutely vital to being able to sustain anything sort of music related.
So let's say a recording artist comes to you, or a songwriter comes to you and goes, I want to do this track. I'm not that experienced. I feel like I know what I want it to sound like. Does someone hire a producer to oversee it? Or do they have to say, how do you, a producer, I'm not a producer, I believe in the power of the producer to help someone get what they want, right? How do you work with that stuff?
So generally what will happen is an artist will come to us with a demo, a rough recording or something like that. Often just a phone recording, and these really do vary in quality. I mean, we've literally had recordings of people singing in the shower, like you can hear the water running in the background. So from that, we then go, okay, is this ready to take into production? If it is, then great. We'll jump on a call and we'll have a chat about their sort of vision for it. And I always, and this is sort of bad sales advice, but I always downsell people on that first call, because it's really exciting if you're an inexperienced artist to go, right, I see that you could do this instrument and this instrument, so I want piano and drums and bass and strings and everything. And actually then trying to sort of shoehorn all of that stuff into a track early on means that you're sort of forcing things rather than letting things grow more naturally. Now, every sales training book in the world would say, no, you've got to keep pushing those upsells. But actually, I think when it comes to music production and when it comes to goodwill online and having a good community, making sure that you're doing what's best for the artist and saying, no, let's start with, so you want to do, say, a country style track. And these are your references. You like this artist, you like this artist. Okay, so let's listen to a bit of their stuff and we'll have a call and discuss it. So why don't we just start you off with the acoustic, the drums and the bass? And then if you want to add more stuff later on.
Would that be a call with you or one of your other producers? Always with you. It starts with you?
So it will start with me, although in the next couple of weeks, it won't be with me.
You're swamped, yeah.
So there's going to be someone else who's going to be doing stuff as well, just to handle the sort of demand that we have at the moment, just because it is very, very busy because online recording is sort of seeing its boom. But yeah, we'll have a conversation about who your references are, your influences, and I think it's really important to try and get to know the artist a little bit. So we usually talk for about half an hour. And then at the end of that, we'll say, okay, well, this would be a good place to start. Have a think about it. A lot of people go, no, I want to start right now. And I'll start, if they really want to go, obviously I'll be like, okay, cool, let's go. But I'll be saying, no, just sit on it for a day or two, think about how this is going to sound, and then come back to us. And then we can take it into production. If the song is ready to take into production, I'll then, from our team, think about who is the best person to assign based on what sort of style they're going for, what sort of sound they want. And then they'll work with that producer, and they'll continue to work with that producer in perpetuity on multiple projects. Or if the song isn't ready and maybe they've just come with like a verse and chorus or something like that, I will say, I think before we take this into production, maybe it's worth having a song development session where you can work one-to-one with the producer to just get the structure sorted, maybe have a couple of sessions and work on writing the lyrics. If we have producers who sort of specialize in working on lyrics as well with artists, and let's get this track ready to then take into production. And that saves that since we brought that in, that has solved so many of the problems that we have had further down the line with the production process, where, say, we've created a full backing track for someone, but they still haven't finished writing the song. So we make sure that everything is totally ready and we know what we're doing. And so after that first call that they have with their producer, they've got a sort of blueprint of what the rest of the track is going to be. And there's always a very clear plan in place, because that lack of experience, they come to us because we're able to create a structure for them, essentially.
Okay.
And yeah.
Wait, so that's great. That's great. I appreciate your sharing the process. So am I understanding that then this essentially there's a producer that helps the songwriter or artist shepherd through the process, and if it's really stays the drums, bass, and vocals, that's good, and if it expands, somehow the producer continues to shepherd that with the artist.
Yeah, absolutely. So they get assigned to a producer. Most of our producers are really, really good at either piano or guitar or drums or bass. And so they will specialize in a certain genre and be able to play a lot of stuff themselves. So that's why it's finding people who are specialists in certain instruments, as well as being really good producers. It's tricky. You know, it's difficult to find people who are good, because it is a very, very niche set of skills that you need to be able to be a good online music producer. And yeah, so
let me ask you just let me ask you this though. In the online business model, is the producer part of that a la carte fee, or is it if you pay for whatever the amount is for, I want piano on this thing, does that include the producer's fee and the piano, or it's like a whole package?
So that's it. As I say, it's all the production and recording, mixing, mastering, and copyright ownership all included in the price. So essentially, if you then booked in for guitar, bass, drums, I would then pass it over to say you want to do a country track, pass that over to one of our producers who specialize in a country style. The artist would then meet with them, and they'd talk like how you and I are talking now. It's all over video chat. You know, it's human connection. That's the key thing, because it's impossible to develop a track together via email. It just is. You know, so much nuance is lost in having to put things into the written word. And so you work with them through the process. It's a back and forth of drafts and ideas until the artist is happy. We don't really put a limit on the number of drafts, because I feel like that can be a real sort of dampener on the creativity if you're sort of feeling as though you're working to a deadline. But obviously, as part of the producer's role, it's about saying, hey, I do think that we are kind of wrapping up now. This is, we're not, the changes that we're making aren't necessarily making this better. They're just making it different. Right. And for some artists, when it's their first go, that's a really tricky thing to have to, because some, people are perfectionists. They want to keep tweaking and changing, and that can go on and become a little obsessive. And so part of the key role of one of our producers is to say, look, this is done. And I think what's nice is that people know that that's coming from a place of authenticity. It's not, we want to get this wrapped up so we can get started on the next one, because we're never pushy on sales with stuff. We're never, there's never pressure put on the artist at all. If the producer has a suggestion and thinks like, hey, this could be cool with some drums, they'll make the suggestion. If the artist says no, fine. We're not pushy with stuff. And I think that sort of karma comes back and means that people want to continue working on things. So you would then have your producer wrap it up, mix and master, get sent over to you, you own it, and then you do with it what you will. Well, ideally you'd work with us to help you promote it, because we now offer those services as well.
Oh, you have some like promotion and branding kinds of things also.
All of those things that people have asked for over the years, that's how we've, honestly, all the assumptions that we've made of what we thought people would want generally have been wrong. And so we've just waited until someone's asked for something and then gone, okay, let's work out how we can do this, because there is demand there. And that's how we've added all the promotional side of things and the coaching side of things. And it's grown from what people have needed at the time. And I think that's how we'll continue to sort of expand, just based on what people ask for.
Tell me about the coaching side that you're adding in also.
So I have a number of clients that I work with one-to-one, where we sort of do social media strategy coaching about getting music picked up for sync, or just like general sort of career development and what their plan is. And there's a real range of people who come to work with us. The example I always give is that on a Monday morning, I could have a call with, a 19-year-old girl from Nashville who wants to sound like Taylor Swift, and then a 60-year-old Japanese man right after who wants to sound like Bruce Springsteen, or wants to do an EDM track or something like that. And that variation is really interesting. And so I work with different people who sort of have different goals. Some it's just they wrote some songs back in the day and they just want to have someone that they can talk to about them and develop them, and you know, how they can just boost it a little bit on social media and turn it into maybe a bit of a side hustle. Others who are maybe earlier on in their career and are sort of committed to really giving it a go and sort of pushing forward with things. And so people have different goals for stuff, and we work out how to get them to that place, and also set people's expectations realistically as well, because it's very easy to get a little starry-eyed, you know, when you're younger, and think that you're immediately going to be an overnight success. And so actually helping people to understand the work that needs to go into things, that's probably the most interesting thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I love that you start with modest goals, and then if it works and everyone's happy and everyone's communicating, then let's add some of this and let's add some of that.
Yeah.
And I'm struck with you. You know, you have essentially recreated the modern record company in a certain sense, although you're not getting the publishing and the, and the mastering, but you're becoming sort of a full service to the artist's side. I mean, do you see yourself expanding into signing artists? I'm just out of curiosity here, you know, or that's the only part you're not doing yet of being a label. I'm just thinking out loud.
Honestly, no, we have no plans to do that.
Yeah.
And the reason is that I think that I think really the tools to do what a label can do, perhaps not to the same scale, but certainly to build to a point where you can then reinvest, I think exists without needing to give away 50% of your music or however much of your music or ownership or anything like that. I think actually, you know, we've seen some great success stories of our own artists and other people, not who've worked with us, but people who've self-funded or self-published or whatever, who've been able to do really well and not been signed to major labels. And I think that people have a really sort of old-fashioned, idealized view of what getting signed means. I want to get signed by a record label. And actually, what you essentially get from a record label is a loan. And you're not going to get anything until you've made that money back. And chances are, with how it works with streaming and stuff like that, it's going to take a long time for you to make that money back if they're not really marketing you, especially if they're hedging their bets with like multiple artists that fit your genre, and there's like throwing out a lot of people who basically do what you do and mass marketing all of them to see which one gets picked up. And so I think actually, rather than giving away half your music and giving away all that, you know, your whatever, take your own control. Take, you know, if you're really committed to doing something, take the tools that are available to you and do your own thing. And I think now is the best time for people to, it's sort of, well, it's the best and worst time in a way, but it's everything for people to be able to do it themselves is there. And I think I wouldn't in good conscience be able to say, right, we're going to promote you, but we're going to own half of what you've done.
Right.
Because I don't think that's the way it should work. And I think that, I don't know, labels either are going to have to change.
As you said, it's the label's essentially a bank, you know, and the bank wants their money back, or the label wants their money back. You know, as this attorney Dina Lapolte says, a label will lend you $1 million, but they're going to want it back.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that because they think it's just that's you're going to then be famous. And I think if the goal is to be signed, often when I speak to artists and they say, right, what I want to do is I want to get signed. And then you say, okay, so why do you want to be signed? And they'll say, well, because then I'll be able to get famous and I'll be able to, you know, I'll be able to play Glastonbury or Coachella or whatever. And it's like, well, no, actually, to play a festival, you need a booking agent. You don't need a label. Okay, fine. But then how am I going to get on the radio? Well, again, you know, you can submit songs to the radio and there are playlists and things like that you can get put on. No one really listens to radio anyway. So you want to be featured on Spotify playlists or Apple Music playlists and things like that. So you can submit those stuff yourself. Oh, okay, right, okay. Yeah, but I want to be signed like with big other artists and stuff like that. Okay, why? Because then I'm going to be associated with them. Why? You are your own thing. And actually, the more that you sort of talk to someone and understand their reasons for getting signed, the more you can just explain, actually, do you actually need to give away half of what you're doing to get these things that you want to get? And I would say in the vast majority of the time, you don't need to get signed, because actually it doesn't increase your chances of being successful that much. And it also, you know, it means that you lose a lot of control over what you're able to do, because there are very, very few, especially major labels, that do give a lot of freedom to artists until they've been able to sort of prove that they're financially viable. but they also hedge their bets in a certain way. You can bet that the major that signed you has got a dozen other artists that do pretty much the same thing that you do, that they're also marketing.
Right.
And
Right.
so, you know, they're not that invested in you, really. You know, you're one of many names on a spreadsheet. And I think that's kind of the issue that I find with labels. And so I always say to people, save your money, invest in yourself, and, you know, always back yourself. That's what one of our employees, Johnny, says all the time. Always back yourself, and I think
Back
he's quite
yourself.
right to say that. Yeah,
That's great. And I know, you know, one of the things we talked about last time was about the importance of building community and building online community and things like Patreon. And how are you approaching that? Or what's your take on the whole ways that we can connect music community, fans, musicians, you know, just what, I know we talked about that a little bit. Just I wanted to bring
yeah.
that into the discussion.
Well, I think now more than ever, that thing of online community is vital, because we are in a situation where we don't really know when we're going to really go back to normal. We don't know if there's going to be a second wave, or, you know, whatever it happens. We need that connection. And if, in order to be able to stay in any sort of music career, or not just financially, but also creatively, to be able to share with people and engage with people, having that community is absolutely vital. And I think that the best way to create a community, first of all, is just it being authentic, and it being about connection, and it not being about, right, we'll make this thing so that we can sell stuff to people, because there's enough of that online already. Do you know what I mean? You go on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
or you go on Facebook now, and it's just like ad after ad after ad after ad saying, hey, you're not doing this, you should buy this thing. And it's quite intimidating. It's, you know, it gets quite jarring as well. And so I think that one thing that we've really tried to do over these last few months, knowing that so many artists are feeling very isolated and feeling disconnected because they can't play live, they can't rehearse with their band, they can't do any of these things, is to create, you know, we've got an online group on Facebook called Tours Artists, where people join and they share stuff. Some of our producers are in there as well, so they'll either share their own music and give feedback on the other artists' stuff. And it's a really nice community that's grown. And it's not a funnel. That's the thing. It's not built to be a sales thing. If people want to book in because they know about us, that usually happens on Instagram. That doesn't happen through the Facebook group. And you've got people who post 3 or 4 times a week and are really active and talking to other people. And then they'll be like, hey, I'm doing a live gig on Twitch, or on, you know, on Instagram or whatever. There's this page here. If anyone could donate any money, I'd really appreciate it. You know as well as I do what the situation is. And everyone's being just authentic about it. They're going like,
Mm-hmm.
look, it's a tricky time right now. I am a singer. This is the music that I make. I hope you like it. If you can, spare some stuff. And people are able to put away their egos for a second and go, you know, I'm asking you to support me here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked for people. We've seen people especially people who are releasing like albums and EPs, when they're saying to people, rather than this is how much it costs, but pay as you feel. You know, like the old Radiohead thing that they did with in Rainbows, where they just released it and said, right, pay what you want. They made more money off of that than they did off of any of their earlier albums. And
That's
I
right.
think that is a really, really good sort of, I don't know if the right word is metaphor, but that's a really good example of the sort of mentality that people should be having right now in terms of how they're engaging with people online, and in terms of building that community. It should always be authentic, and always not be about, this is what I can do. It's about what can I give you as well? And it has to be cooperative. Otherwise, it's just loads of people yelling, look at me, at each other. And that's not really a community. That's
It's
just
not
a
exactly.
nightmare.
Well, when we talked last week, you mentioned this phrase online busking. Online busking is kind of happening
Yeah,
now. Is that how you see it?
I think so. I think there are people who are, in the online sense, putting their hat out and playing a few songs and hoping that the people passing by will, you know, throw a few pounds into or a few dollars into their hat. And what's been the most interesting, is seeing which artists have been willing to do that. And we've seen a lot of artists, particularly ones who take themselves very, very seriously, not wanting to admit that there's any sort of negative situation, or that they are struggling, because they
Mm-hmm.
have an image that they want to keep up of being, you know, I'm fine all the time, and, you know, I'm sort of untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones who are struggling the most. And it's the ones who are willing to sort of put their ego aside for a moment and say, hey, this is a very weird time for the arts in general, not just music, but the arts in general, any support would be greatly appreciated. And also, you know, if they've gone and watched someone's gig and they've donated £1 or £2 or whatever, it does add up. We've seen people who've made £200-300 for playing a, you know, 20-30 minute gig, just because they seem really nice, and people have come on and watched a song or two, and they've, well, you know, when they've seen new people have joined, they've been like, hey, thank you so much for joining or whatever. And it's authentic. And I think that's something that just, you can't really fake that. And I think that's why there are certain online communities that are thriving at the moment and others that aren't. And I would say that with our one particularly, we've tried really hard to make sure that we're not, because we were set up already to do what we're doing before all of this happened. We've been really careful to make sure that we don't, you know, we don't want to look as though we're like trying to capitalize on what is a massive issue and a massive worldwide situation. And so we've sort of doubled down on making sure that we're not being pushy at all with stuff. We are all about just trying to give people a confidence boost, give people authentic, real feedback on their music. And it's really nice to see people who only know each other through either working with tours or being part of the group from different corners of the world, engaging with one another. Like for example, just yesterday we posted a thing, or we reposted on our story, an artist that we've been working with who's based in Germany called Anna Heinmüller, playing. She had a photo, or it was a video of her in the car listening to a song, saying, this is my new favorite song. And it was a song that we'd produced for another artist that's based in I think it's Canada or maybe the United States. And these people have only come together through knowing each other on this group, and she sort of tagged her in it. And it was a really lovely thing to see this genuinely authentic connection between these two people of how the music that they created, you know, it transcended all the national borders, it transcended everything, and there was just this really authentic community there, and that was a really nice moment.
No, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, I think one of the things that's gone on in the COVID crisis is the world realizes again that music is healing and music is transformative and music is important for us all. And musicians go, I got to make music to feel alive, to feel like I'm giving, to feel like I'm contributing, and to reconnect with the joy or the sadness or whatever I'm feeling. And there's this connection between the fans and the artist. And as you said, being authentic, this is happening. I'm contributing my money. I need some cash, whatever it's going to be. There's a way yeah, it's a great, I love what you're doing. It's a big part of the equation here. And I also appreciate that you're, you know, so many artists that I speak to, their first producer was a bad situation where they spent too much money and they didn't get what they wanted. And they went, I worked for a really long time waiting tables and I spent $4,000 on a track that I hate. You know, I'm like, man, I'm sorry, so sorry that happened. That shouldn't have happened. But you're giving it a structure that goes gently, which is how musicians, even the most experienced musicians, need more time than we thought we would need, right?
I think that's it, and that has come out of my own experiences with exactly that, where, you know, working with a producer who was really just trying to just get as much money out of it as possible. I didn't like the music at all. I didn't enjoy the process. It was very sort of forceful, and actually it was really, in hindsight, I was having my head filled with big ideas that were not ever going to happen realistically, you know, or well, maybe, you know, but it was really a thing of me being very young and naive and not understanding what it is that needed to happen, and having to have that experience of then, you know, as you say, saving up a bunch of money, spending it on something and it being wasted. That is so common. So many artists have had that, you know, wherever they're at and whatever age they're at as well. It doesn't necessarily just happen to younger people or even to inexperienced people. It can happen to experienced people as well, because if someone can be convincing enough in their massaging of your ego, sometimes we get blinded slightly and we can go, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe I could be a big star and win a Grammy and, you know, all that sort of, you know, you never know, maybe, oh, okay, yeah, here's 20K. And it's like, we wanted to create a safe space that was totally transparent, totally, you know, there was no hidden bit at the end. There was no extra stuff. There was no contract that you're tied into that means that you then secretly owe us money in the future,
Everything. Yeah.
or,
Right.
and there's
Right.
no way that we can, just fundamentally, there's no way that we can make it more expensive than you initially wanted it to be. We can't say, that we have to do more hours or anything like that, because we're very clearly states, as in the T's and C's, and it's fully inclusive. What you pay for the instrument is that. And so you have that control to do that. And it's because all of us in the team at one point or another have been on the wrong end of a bad deal with a producer who didn't have our best interests at heart, which is unfortunately all too common, probably more
Right.
so now than ever, with social media and the ability to be able to kind of catfish people into thinking that you're more, or producers sort of making it seem as though they're much bigger than they actually are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's
No,
very
that's
easy to
true.
do that. You can buy, million followers. You can buy, or use stock photos and hire actors, and it's impossible to know, to trust. It's impossible to know who you can trust. So I think transparency and authenticity is the currency that's going to be most valuable for anyone trying to build an online community around their music, and around anything really, to be honest, not just music. But yeah,
Right.
I think so. Those are the two words that we always come back to when we're thinking about how we're going to work on stuff: is transparency and authenticity. People need to know what they're spending, where it's going, what it's going to be on, how the process works, and that we have their best interests at heart. And that's it. And that's why, I think if you go and look through our Instagram or our site, and you reach out to any of the artists that we've worked with, they'll say, yeah, it was, a great experience.
That's
I
great. That's
absolutely
great.
am going to do it again. And yeah, that's something that's really important to us.
So let's see, before we talk about what your free gift is, anything we missed or anything we covered so much great stuff. I'm so happy with our talk today. Anything we missed to say before we talk about what your free gift will be for the folks?
Sure. Well, I think for those now who are sort of having to absolutely pivot their career path, or what it is that they're thinking about, of how they're trying to monetize their music and make it sustainable in some way, one of the harsh truths that you're going to need to accept is that if you weren't fortunately prepared for this, or if you don't have loads of money in the bank to begin with, it is going to take some time. And I think that sucks to hear, but if you're expecting it to happen very quickly, you're now in a position where, if you look at sites like Sound Better or Fiverr or those sort of open marketplaces, they are now so oversaturated with musicians, because everyone has gone, I need to create a profile, I need to get on there so that I can start doing stuff, that what you have is a race to the bottom on price.
Mm-hmm.
And you have someone from, maybe somewhere in another country, like Eastern Europe or something like that, charging $10 to master an entire album.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a really difficult situation for producers or for artists, or top liners or writers, whatever it may be, anyone who has those skills that they were previously charging for, because you're now competing in a global way, whereas before you were competing on a local level, because the local level has sort of disappeared for the moment. And so you probably are going to have to either take a few projects that you feel you're undercharging for, to build that credibility, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to have to swallow your pride in some cases, and just go, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do to keep the lights on. I'm going to have to do something, and try and be inventive. Try and don't just see what other people are doing and go, oh, that's working for them, I'm going to do that. Take their idea and then put a hat on it, make it a bit better, and go, okay, no, here's the problem with that. Let's do this in a cool way. And I think that one of the most lovely things that we've seen is that real, now this is quite a British thing, this might not be a reference that the American listeners will get, but there's been a real sense of sort of blitz spirit. That was the thing, during World War II, when we were being bombed, all the communities came together, and you had this real communal rush and urge of within. And actually, I think the music community is having a similar sort of situation right now, where they are going, we're all in this together. Let's keep calm and carry on. I'm just realizing quite how British I'm sounding in all of this now compared to all of your other speakers.
Wait, you're from UK? I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you hadn't realized at this point, I'm from
I
England.
thought you were just outside of Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's the thing, is that you're going to have to be inventive, and you're going to have to try and find your niche in what it is that you're doing, because everyone is now working out how they do what they do online.
Well, yeah, no, that's beautiful. I mean, you're right. Everyone's in it together music community. The good news is the music community can connect through Facebooks and Instagrams, and so we're fine. We need the community more than ever, and luckily the technological infrastructure is there to make that easier than it's ever been. And so development is increased and streaming ability is increased, and Zoom has a new version every week. And so it's getting better and easier and getting better and easier. So Joe, talk to me about, tell the folks at home what your free gift is going to be for them to check out.
So the free gift that I am offering is an ebook that I put together based on over the last 4.5, 5 years of doing this, seeing what the most common mistakes that people were making at home when they were recording. And actually, this being something that not just beginners are guilty of, but some people who have been recording for a long time, but working out of a home space because they've never had someone else to say that you don't plug that into that, by the way, that's
right.
too loud, you know.
Right.
These really common mistakes. And so I've put together an ebook, which is the 15 most common home recording mistakes made by rookie recording artists. And it's a breakdown of everything that I've seen over the years. I went back and had a look at all of our projects and sort of tried to find, you know, we're very detailed in terms of the way that we have notes for all of our projects. And I went through and we have a, you know, folder where certain issues are put so that we can create content that sort of solves those problems for people. And these are the things that I keep seeing people make, the mistakes I keep seeing people make again and again. And so it's split into 3 sections. It's not massively long, but it's very, very helpful, I think, and I hope.
That's great.
But it's split into performance mistakes and recording mistakes, and then some, you know, other stuff that's about you know, setting up your room and you know, and actually some of it seems basic, but you'd be surprised how many people, you know, make some of these things that to someone who maybe knows will go, well, yeah, obviously you shouldn't do that. But, you know, I get things sent in from people who've been recording for 20 years that are clipped. You know, I get like clipped drum recordings. And I'm like, you know, this is distorted. It shouldn't look like that. That's rectangle that you've just sent me, that is wrong. You know, turn down the gain and try it again. So we're offering this free gift, and I hope it's of use. It's yeah, I do go off on some tangents in it a little bit to sort of try and put things into context. And I've certainly been accused in the past of rambling a little, which I may do in this ebook. But I think it'll be of real help if you're someone who records at home and either is new to it and wants to make sure that you don't start by making the mistakes, or if you're more experienced and you just want to make sure that you're not sort of missing something because you've got the blinders on and you've been working in a certain way for such a long time.
Well, we're all, you know, recording at home now, and no matter if we walk into a studio expecting that someone else takes care of the maintenance, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I gotta plug those things in yet. I gotta do my headphone mix. So, and we're the artist, and we're the songwriter, and we're the engineer, and the editor, and the mastering guy. So.
But yeah, that's it. Everyone, the role of being a songwriter now is not that of being a songwriter. It is of, you know, we were talking about being signed to a label. The responsibility now, I suppose, one of the reasons why people would want to be signed to a label is so that they can forget about having to worry about half of the other stuff. But actually now you have to really know as much as possible about all the different facets of the industry that you're working in, so that you can effectively make your way through it and not be caught off guard by things happening, and not be taken advantage of by people who are just there to make a quick buck, or, you know, whatever it is that their slightly devious plans are sort of set up to do.
Right. No, that's great. Well, Joe, thank you so much for sharing so much information and wisdom. And I love your perspective on recording and producing and working at home and creating a community. So, Summit folks, if you got any questions for Joe, we can post them in the Facebook group. We might get Joe in there to answer them. I think we might do a Facebook Live with you if we can work out the time frame difference, time
Yeah,
zone difference.
absolutely. Might be a
And
late night. It's okay. I can do
I
that.
mean, if you can work out the time zone difference,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do an early one for you. So thank you so much. This has really been so informational and inspirational and totally great. Thank you so much, Joe. We'll see you on the Facebook.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I hope this was helpful to people.
Yeah, great. Thanks. All right. Cheers, guys. See ya.